Okay, this is my next one. How would you answer my friend's question? Why does God need to create man to have someone to worship him?
I have no idea. That's how I would answer him. Jesus said that narrow is the way that leads to life, and few there be that find it. Broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go that way. When you look at the broad way, what Jesus is saying is that most of humanity is not going to worship God. Most of humanity is going to be in rebellion against God. And when you look at rebellious humanity, it's rebellious humanity that causes all the junk that you have in this world. You know, if people would literally go through and do the things that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, we wouldn't have any of the problems that we've got. Any of them. It's like literally any of them. And so you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a big one, you know. You go through and look at what he says about worship and what he says about righteousness in the Sermon on the Mount. You look at, and the Sermon on the Mount is the outline for what a Christian is supposed to look like. You look at those passages and you see what Jesus had to say about it. And if we implement those passages in our lives, we become people who are a blessing to the people around us, who are others-centered, who are kind, who literally do not want to harm people, who pray for their enemies, that kind of thing. And so that is not the vast majority of humanity. The vast majority of humanity, even people who call themselves Christians. So I'm not excusing, you know, the things that so-called Christians have done over the years. But when you're looking at a Christian, there's a Christian who calls himself a Christian, and there's somebody who's the real deal. And so what you want to be doing is looking for the real deal. And if you don't have the real deal, then it's somebody who, again, is in rebellion against God. And when you go down through the ages and you see all this stuff, when you're talking about warfare, you're talking about family problems, you're talking about awful things that happen to children, you know, all the things that are going on are caused by wicked rebellion in humanity. So why in the world would God want to make a planet where most of the people are wicked and rebellious and just hurting everybody, including the people that have committed their lives to God? Why would he do that? And again, I don't know. I have no idea. Except for when you get to the end, what you have in the new heaven and new earth are angels who have chosen to follow God. You have people from every age of humanity, whether you're talking about before the flood or after the flood, or in the Old Testament, or in the New Testament, or down through the ages, you have a group of people who have chosen to serve and to follow God, and they did it for real. And when you get to the end, you have a new heaven and a new earth, and there's no more sin, there's no more sorrow, there's no more pain, there's no more suffering. Everything is just good for the rest of eternity. And so the only thing I could come up with is that when you get to that point, that good, when we're talking about heaven and the new heavens and the new earth, that good must be so good that it was worth it. And that's hard for me to understand. So that's something, you know, when I talk to guys about stuff like this, that's one of the points that I make. Heaven must be so good that it's worth all the pain, all the suffering, everything that everybody went through. And you have to understand that God sees it all. He's not reading it in the news, and he's not getting a jaded viewpoint of these things. He sees everything. So he's seen it all, and he judges it all, and he's going to take care of it all. And in the end, he's going to have a group of people who are committed to following him, and they're going to be perfect, and they're going to be people who are made in his image, like fully made in his image, willing to serve and to worship and to love God and to have God love them for the rest of eternity. And again, that must be so good that it's worth it. And then I'll ask the guy, so would you like to be part of that, or would you like to be part of the other? And you get to take your pick.
Yeah. What would you say to the people who come out of this from like that God's an egotistical maniac point of view? It's like, He's up in heaven, and he's like, well, I need someone to worship me and do what I say, and so I'm going to create man just so that I can have someone do whatever I say, and they're coming at it from that angle. What would you say in rebuttal to that?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things that you could say. Number one, God is love, and love has to have an object. And God doesn't need humanity for that, because you have a three-part nature to God himself. And so God can love the Son can love the Father can love the Holy Spirit, and vice versa. And so God's always been love, and he's sufficient in and of himself. One of the things that the Bible speaks to is the fact that God uses humanity as a school for the angels.
Yeah.
And that God is showing the angels what he can do, literally with dirt. Because when you go through the creation story in Genesis chapter 1, you have God creating all the animals, and he speaks them into existence. All the fish he speaks into existence, all the birds he speaks into existence, but man he takes clay and forms it and molds it and breathes on it and gives it life, and then the woman he takes from the side of the man. And so mankind's creation is fundamentally different than the creation of everything else that you have on the planet. And what God does is he takes a lump of dirt and he makes it into his image, and he glorifies himself through it. And it's something, again, that he's showing to the angels. One of the ultimate things that you have in this situation is God showing his grace, God showing his mercy, God showing his goodness on people that don't deserve it, and God doing that in a way that's completely and totally sacrificial. And so again, an egotist doesn't want a group of people an egotist would make robots. That is not what God did. And so an egotist wants a group of people or a group of things ultimately that look like people who will just give his praises all the time, and that is not what God did. Like I said, for the most part, people don't worship God, and so what in the world would he do that for? I wouldn't waste my time. And of course, I don't know the end. It's like I'm not in a position where I can see how good it is. And here's the other thing: God is love, and so God loves people, and it is normal when you love someone to want to have them love you back. And it's not egotistical; it's normal. That's how love goes. I love somebody, and there's a reciprocation, and the fellowship is tight, and everything's good about it, and that's what you want. And so, when I look at the whole issue of worship, the Bible in the book of Revelation, in Revelation chapter 4, at the end of the chapter, you have a group of 24 elders who are worshiping at the throne of God, and they specifically say, they say this: "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created." I like the Old King James Version. It says, "And for your pleasure they were created." And so I'm literally created to please God. And one of the things that happens when you please God is you're fulfilling your purpose. There's a purpose there. I'm made to do that. And whenever I talk to people about this, I go, okay, the deal here is that God made us to love him. He loves us. He doesn't have to be made to love us, but God made us to love him, and we have to do that by our free will. When I'm doing that, I am fulfilling my purpose, and so I work right. And what I always talk about is lawnmowers used for mowing lawns versus used for being a snowblower. And so if you take your lawnmower out this winter and you try to blow snow with it, your push mower, and you try to blow snow with it, it will work. I saw a guy do it, about 2 inches on his lawn, and he went out and he used it for a snowblower. And that's great, because it'll work. And what'll happen is it'll work for a little while, and then pretty soon you're going to have problems with your lawnmower because the lawnmower is not designed to blow snow. You're not using it for the purpose it's to be used for, and you're going to wreck it. That is one of the reasons that you have so many wrecked people. We're made to have fellowship with God. We're made to please God. We're made to have a love relationship with God. And they go, I don't want to do that. And they can make their lives work for a period of time, but it all starts breaking down and it all falls apart. And so, again, when you're looking at the whole worship thing with God, God doesn't need me for anything. He's got all the angels in heaven. All the angels in heaven are worshiping him. He doesn't need me for anything. And the reason that he made me is because he wants to have fellowship with me, and he wants to bless me for the rest of eternity, and he wants a love relationship with me. That's why he made you too. So, again, when I'm talking to people like that, I'm like, get over yourself, dude.
Yeah.
You're going to worship something. And usually that's the next place I go. You're already worshiping something. And some of the people that I've talked to are worshiping themselves. Some of them are, worshiping idols. It could be lust. It could be, it could be pleasure. It could be, the same thing. But greed and things like that. Sometimes it's another person. We're made to worship, and so worship is going to go one direction or another. And the place it's supposed to go is towards the Lord.